Last week, we reviewed Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, an animated television series reimagining of the 2010 film Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. On today's episode, we're discussing the pilot of a television series which serves as an extension/recontextualization of a 2008 epic adventure drama, Australia. The difference is, you were familiar with Scott Pilgrim the movie, the comics, the characters. You were also hyper-aware when the plot shifted away from the 2010 story.
Yeah.
You haven't seen Australia. I'm scared to ask you if you realized that Faraway Downs was a younger Hugh Jackman, or if you thought that Nicole Kidman and him were just ageless.
No, I mean, I didn't know that it was based on the Australia thing, but I remember
This is the Australia thing.
But I remember it coming out in 2008. That was around the same time of things like The Dark Knight and what else? Iron Man?
Yeah.
I remember even seeing the promotional posters for it. And now that you say that, because when I went on to Hulu, I remember seeing the poster for this. The poster for Australia is a lot like the poster for Faraway Downs.
Do you recall what the reception was for the movie?
I think, if I remember correctly, it's somewhere in the 60s for Rotten Tomatoes, like a 68%.
You're close. It had a 6.6 on IMDb. That might be more along the lines, but it has a 54%. The
rotten. Okay.
Criticism, well, yes, it's rotten, but the criticism was mixed, and mostly it fell on the fact that it had a 165-minute runtime, which probably aided the television series in how they were able to spread it out. Now, you remember The Hateful Eight. We went to go see it in theaters.
We saw the 3-hour version, 70mm. It even had an intermission in the middle.
But there's like a 4-hour version that's on Netflix that has like it by episodes, I believe. And
they were going to do the Zack Snyder Justice League. I remember they were even thinking about splitting that into episodes before they just decided to kind of disregard that idea.
Of course, this has been compared to Zack Snyder's cut, but they didn't. Baz Luhrmann, the guy who created it, the guy who's done Elvis, the guy who made this kind of because of COVID. He was in the middle of a lockdown, and he was like, you know what I can do with my time? I can re-edit my old movie, a movie that he put a lot of love into, and that they spent, I think, 9 months filming.
One of my pros for the show was that they were using, I thought at the time, an old-time filter, and I thought that worked really well for the show, but knowing that this was, when did they shoot this thing? Like 2006, 2007?
2006 to 2007. They did reshoots in 2008, but you have to know that like Hugh Jackman and Nicole Kidman are like 55, 56 years old. They did not look that old, I assume, in this. They would have been like 40.
I thought that this was just going to be... I didn't know that
you didn't realize they were doing a CGI, or that you thought maybe a CGI filter or anything? You just 100% believe that that's what Hugh Jackman looks like.
Yes.
All right, well, mixing it up, because I know...
Keanu Reeves is John Wick. He's 59 years old. So Hugh Jackman, if you were to tell me this is how he looks now...
it wrinkles, especially when you're out in the desert like that. I don't know. Nicole Kidman herself, too. I don't know how you can mistake her.
I probably should have, because the last thing I've seen Nicole Kidman in was Big Little Lies. In fact, I actually like...
Or AMC.
Yeah, at the start of every film.
Yeah, at the start of every single movie.
But here I actually liked her character more than I did in Big Little Lies. But the person who absolutely kills it, I feel like it must be the same with the reception, is Hugh Jackman. I thought his acting
I thought you were going to say Nola, the kid.
Best. Nola? No. Oh, so that kid is a lot older now, too.
Yeah, he would be. He actually was in Operation Buffalo. That series from a really long, the comedy that also took place in Australia. So I'm going to mix it up. For Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, we did a game that was called It's Been a While.
Yes.
And I want to do something different. I want to do a game called At What Point. So I'm going to start telling you a bunch of trivia, tidbits about Faraway Downs or about the film Australia. At a certain point, those facts will become lies, and you have to stop me. You can stop me twice before you lose.
Okay.
And when you think I've crossed over into fiction, and you're allowed to kind of make your opinion about every single thing that I say. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So on November 26, 2023, Faraway Downs debuted on Disney Plus in Australia and Hulu in the U.S. I mean, that's a gimme.
Yes, right.
The film received an Academy Award nomination for Best Costume Design.
No, it did. I remember, because I think the 2009 Academy Awards, the ones that they did in 2009, were, I think that was nominated.
That wasn't one of the ones that Hugh Jackman actually, did his dance for, right? Or does he only do Tonys?
I'm not sure.
I don't know. I remember something on YouTube.
But yes, that I know is true.
Like Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, fans feel the trailer was not very straightforward.
I would say that's probably true because, if it's coming out in 2008 and then 2023, it's so strange. It's a 6-part miniseries, right, as of now? And you're saying that every single
They
episode...
can't extend it. But yeah, go ahead.
You're saying every single episode is going to be about an hour long? Because I think that's...
They added, I think, like 40 minutes to this runtime, and then obviously they changed. They had multiple endings shot. And so that's what really, like, because they did test audience runs, they didn't like the original ending, so he changed it in 2008, 2009. And then now he wants to be, like, closer to what his original idea is. That's why you can't say it's a remake, because obviously they're going to be changing parts of the story.
I think it was like in 2004, they also made, I guess, kind of a director's cut of Anchorman, Legend of Ron Burgundy. Yeah. And I think that you could probably compare that to this because there were scenes from the movies, but also there was deleted scenes that they put in as
Personally,
well.
I don't like it when movies or television do that. Like, I feel like they're just cashing in on something that they've already given us 80% of the content and they just want more of it. But that doesn't mean that this can be an entertaining show, especially to those people who haven't watched the movie. However, it's funny because a lot of the reception has been from fans of the movie who've gone on to like this.
Okay.
All right, so Baz Luhrmann says that he's interested in now making an Elvis series.
I'm going to stop you there, hoping that that's...
You only get 2 stops.
Yeah, I'm going to use it there.
Nope, he actually did say now that he has done this, he's interested in doing an Elvis one as well.
That's just like when David Ayer said that there was a Suicide Squad cut of the first film with Will Smith.
And this was after the next
Suicide Squad came out. And more specifically, after Zack Snyder's cut came out, and everyone seemed to like Zack Snyder's cut. He was like, actually, there's a Suicide Squad cut that I think a lot more people are going to enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
So
has that ever happened or no?
No, I don't think anyone wants to see it.
1,500 wild horses were used for this movie. 4 different horses played the drover's horse. And I'll give away that, like, Hugh Jackman is only known as the drover for the entire series.
Yeah, he doesn't have a name.
Yeah, he doesn't have a name.
I was waiting to see it, but the subtitles just kept saying the drover and then his dialogue.
But the 1,500 horses...
I would believe it. I know that, like, you need to do a lot of that. I remember 1883 had a lot of horses and horseback riding lessons that they had to do, so I could probably compare it to that. Actually, speaking of the Yellowstone verse, this first episode reminds me so much of the pilot of Yellowstone, because
Taylor Sheridan doesn't have a thing to do with it.
But it deals with the same thing. Cattle trespassing into native land. If you remember, in the Yellowstone pilot, when I was talking about it, I think in the 1923 podcast, that
Native Americans,
that dealt with cattle going on to different land and then them not wanting to get the cattle back. So
I thought you were saying the re-education of, like, again, indigenous or Aboriginal people who then are taken by a faith-like type organization. I think in 1923, it was also Christians who, because they had a nunnery and they were like slapping the girls on their wrists to try to teach them English and stuff.
Well, I never saw 1923. I'm talking about Yellowstone just of itself, that they both revolved around cattle and where the cattle were exactly going, what route they were doing. That was strange to see the comparison between the two of them. But yeah, I believe the horse fact.
All right, yes, that's true. Filming went way over budget.
I would believe that, yeah. Yeah.
He's a perfectionist, you know? He has to go over budget. Russell Crowe was attached as the lead during pre-production, but he left after demanding a personal script approval, that he got final, approval, and also wanting more money.
Wanting more money. You know what? I think I don't know anything about the film, but I would say that's true.
That's true, yeah. Okay, next one is Heath Ledger was considered also for the same role, but backed out due to his personal grudge against Baz Luhrmann.
Oh,
it might be Baz. I don't know. It's Baz or Baz.
This is the problem, is that I know that in 2008 he came out with The Dark Knight.
He did.
And I don't know if he would have had time because...
Well, he backed out.
Yeah, well, yeah. I'm going to use my second stop there.
Oh, no, it was true.
Oh, okay.
It was true. Part of it was because of The Dark Knight. But again, Moulin Rouge, apparently he had a part that he was going for in that, and he was passed over for it, and so he took it out on the next role. While no footage was shot, and at this point you've lost the game, so I'm just going to go through them real quick to see what you think. While no footage was shot, Kidman and Jackman did additional digital recordings, ADR, to bolster previously cut scenes.
Yeah, I remember that.
I'm talking about for this.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I know, and that happened. Again, I'm going to bring up the Justice League again. I remember that they got other people to do additional voice work for that, also in Avengers Endgame. Like, Natalie Portman didn't actually show up, but they did use some of her lines so they could use her name in the credits.
Yeah, and imagine how, weird it would have been if they had to do reshoots and they went all the way to Australia and then they had to, digitize their face to try to make it, half of the movie was actually their face from then, and then now it's just, de-wrinkled and, trying to make him... That's what they're going to have to do for Wolverine when he's fighting, what's-his-face? Because in Logan, he was aged up.
Yes,
and now they have
true.
to age him back down
So you're saying they're
status.
going to digitize his face, almost like okay.
Oh, I don't know. I'm speculating. But okay, the next one is Nicole Kidman has said that shooting this film was the favorite experience of her career. And
wow.
That's true.
You know what? This seems like such a passion project, not just from the director, like I think you said it was, but also it seemed like even though I only was watching the show, Nicole Kidman, I wouldn't be surprised if she was executive producer on this.
She loved it so much that she's the one who pushed for Hugh Jackman to be in it. They were at like a Super Bowl party together, and she was like, "You have to be in this." He's like, "I haven't seen the script." She's like, "It's Baz Luhrmann. You have to do it." And so that's what they did. She even castrated like bulls or something.
Oh, jeez.
In preparation. She seems like really in love with Australia. The main set was flooded out from the biggest storm in 50 years, so it also suspended filming for a really long time. There's a lot of stories. The Wikipedia page goes on forever about production problems. Even there was like an equine flu between the horses.
Oh,
so
wow.
and since they had 1,500 horses, that was obviously a problem. The lie was going to come when I said Hugh Jackman saved Nicole Kidman from a trio of kangaroos. Now, what really happened was Nicole Kidman saved Hugh Jackman, not from a trio of kangaroos, but from a scorpion or something.
How did she do that?
Well, it was crawling into his bag or something, and she just picked it up and like moved it, and then the whole cast gave her a round of applause because she's a famous actress, and like they were surprised that she didn't just kill it. I also wanted to throw in the fake fact of the film was heavily influenced by Lawrence of Arabia, because I know you've seen that film pretty recently. All right, the first episode here is called Chapter 1, The Land. In 1939, English aristocrat Sarah Ashley crosses the world to confront her husband and sell a 1,000,000-acre cattle ranch in the Australian outback. And this is the first time that Nicole Kidman and Jackman have worked together back then since they worked on Happy Feet. So they were the mom and dad in that.
Yeah, and I think that was 2006.
Yeah,
right?
so they went from one to the next.
Yeah. The only thing
different environments.
I would add, it was September 1939, and we actually don't start out with Lady Sarah Ashley, again, Nicole Kidman. We start out with Nuala, a half-blood native boy, and he recounts his grandfather's resentment towards the white men trespassing on their land, and as well as their cattle, and their land is called King Carney. And then we go to England, where Lady Sarah Ashley travels from England to Australia, more specifically Darwin, to get to the Faraway Downs. We learn that she wants to divorce her husband and sell her estate, and Faraway Downs is the last cattle station outside of King Carney amidst the looming threat of
Now,
war.
the funny thing about that is I feel like that intro is more fleshed out than it was in the original movie. In the movie, she's just kind of showing up in Australia. Like, she's coming off the boat.
Yes, because the first 10 minutes we see her in England.
And I can definitely see why a director would be like, you know what we're going to change? We're going to change the very beginning so people know it's not the same thing.
Yes, and she's riding a horse. She's speaking to everyone. We see that she's living in this huge mansion and talking to people. And then
I don't remember that from the movie. Okay, yeah.
Wait, have you seen the movie?
I've seen like the first 50 minutes of it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, upon reaching Australia, I feel like this must be the same thing. The drover, Hugh Jackman, he is in a bar fight throughout the whole thing. This was actually a really good sequence. I liked it a lot because we got Lady Sarah Ashley.
It was goofy though,
everyone,
right?
Oh, it was, but it was funny too.
Was it campy, do you think? Would you put it under campy?
I would say, yeah, actually I would. The whole episode, not just like the final part, which I think is especially camp.
So it's weird how they're like tackling serious issues and then at the same time.
A lot of themes. Feminism. One huge one is feminism because she faces a lot of hostility.
The main character.
And it's all about kind of inclusivity. And then the tenuous relationship between white people and indigenous people, especially in the late 30s, as we see Hitler is starting to gain power. She even reads that in a newspaper at one point.
Okay.
And then, and so we got those themes. But then when we go back to actually the drover in the bar fight scene, we see a ton of people, like the whole governorship. Everyone is trying to figure out why Lady Sarah Ashley is in Darwin. And that is because even though her husband did not want her showing up at all, and it was like everything is fine, she is actually going to go with the drover because the drover agreed that she would take him or he would take her to the Faraway Downs. Yes. So when they are in the car and they're talking and everything, I was actually really enjoying that sequence as well because there's like 4 different conversations going on. Seeing the first 50 minutes, I don't know if this is how it was in the movie, but the show is so jam-packed with conversations and so jam-packed with information that it wasn't just information flying at you a mile a minute. There was like different things happening like every single second.
How is that not the same thing as information flowing at you a mile
Because
a minute?
this was even more information. I'm talking about Lady Sarah Ashley.
So you weren't overwhelmed by it though?
I was though. That's the thing. But I was enjoying what they were talking about.
Okay. You were overwhelmed, but you were enjoying it.
Yes, you have Nicole Kidman and Hugh Jackman. Their chemistry, I felt like, was kind of off the charts. In 1 second, she's talking about why she's going to divorce her husband, saying that her husband is cheating on her. And then the next second, she's looking at kangaroos and she's really happy. And then the next second after that, the kangaroos get shot. I mean, it's just insane, all the stuff that's happening. And when she gets to the Faraway Downs, she sees that the place has just been decimated. I mean, you have cattle that are dead, so it suddenly switches tones on you, and I thought that really worked as well. The pacing, at least for the first 2/3 of this episode, I thought was really good. And then she goes into the house and she sees that her husband is dead.
Yeah, and all these people are trying to stop her from going inside, right? Like she follows some sort of like doctor or something, or
yes, yeah. When she goes inside, there's a doctor over the dead body.
I don't think it was the doctor who was over the dead. Well, no. It was, and then the other guy, the other sort of shitty character pops up, and he's like, "Sorry for your loss."
Yes, Neil.
Yes,
Neil is a character that's evil. We learn later on
so
that
you do get to that point.
Yes, so he was kind of security. He works for Kearney Cattle Company, which I believe is where the husband for Sarah Lady Ashley also worked for.
Mm-hmm.
And he was tasked with having to get Sarah to leave ASAP. For some
before
reason,
she figures out exactly where those cattle are going and what they're being used for.
Yes, and like that is his one thing that he's trying to do this whole episode, get her to leave, and they say that she's going to leave like right away, right after they have kind of a little burial for her husband, and then for some reason the drover says, "Hey, actually, I'll give you $10,000 to stay for the night." I forgot what exactly the reasoning was.
You're skipping over, I think, the scene where he also like took off his shirt and then like poured water on himself. Did that happen yet?
Yeah. No, but that was only like a very short scene.
Every review felt like bringing it up.
Really?
Yeah, they were like, "This is such a romance. Look at Hugh Jackman back in the day."
I actually didn't get as much of Hugh Jackman as I thought I was going to get in the second half. And the romance angle, aside from the scene where they're in the car and they're talking to each other, I didn't even think that it really touched on the romance as of yet. But again, probably the next 5 episodes. I know that the poster for the movie is them in an embrace, like over the canyon. So obviously that's going to happen at some point.
Yes.
But so all that, I would say, is maybe the first 40 minutes. I thought it was good. I thought it worked for the show. I thought that the acting was good, the pacing, how it looked, even though now I know this was 2007.
How about the relationship between Nola and, what's her face?
So that's the last 15 minutes, and that's when the show, Sarah, thought, kind of really lost it. So Sarah, she's sleeping. She's planning to leave the next day. She hears a sound. She goes outside. It's nothing. She comes back in, and Nola, again, the kid, is there. He's also narrating the story as well. And they have a talk with one another, and through this talk we learn that he says that Neil is a very bad person. He's evil. She should not trust him no matter what. And also Nola is pointing at the map, and he's talking about the cattle, showing where they're coming from, and that's when Sarah learns basically everything she needs to. She's like, okay, so my husband probably knew that these cattle was going on to the Kearney lands, and there was some information that he wanted to let out to the people, and they probably killed him so that information was not let out because the Kearney company does not want people to know. So
she doesn't assume it was a big misunderstanding? She kind of in the movie, I think, thinks it's a big misunderstanding.
Well, that's what happens to the next day. Yeah. So Neil comes to bring her to the airport, and I thought that this was really dumb of Sarah because we've already heard Nola say, "Do not trust Neil," and the first thing that she does is talk about the Kearney company and the cattle going on to the native land. And Neil's like, "Well, where'd you hear that?" And what she does is she points to Nola. And even in that scene prior, we had Daisy, Nola's mom, come in and be like, "Don't let them hurt my boy. Like, be careful."
Straight from the movie.
And so she just sells him out right away. Sells out that it was Nola, and then that's when Neil goes over to Nola and is like, "Tell her that you were lying."
I think it's to show the difference between like the gullibility of Sarah when the movie begins. She's like, "This can't possibly be what we think it is. Like, we're better than that. Like us British." And so then when she sees how Neil responds by like going after this kid, right? Like he starts hitting him and stuff.
Well, this is what happens though. Neil goes over to Nola and is like, "Tell her that you were lying." Nola says that he was lying. She's just willing to accept that and is like, you know what? She's like, don't hurt the boy. I'm sure that it was just kind of all in his head. She's in the car. They're ready to go. And then Nola gets on top of a windmill and he's like,
yeah.
And he's like, I'm not lying. You're the one that's lying, Neil, and shows that the windmill is working. And the reason for that,
I think it's not just a windmill. I think it's what is one of those water controlling. They're called a generator or something like that.
Yes, and the reason for that is because Neil said earlier on in the episode that wasn't working for some reason. Now there are 1,000 things that I felt like Neil could do here that would make sense. He could have said, "Oh, I didn't know that they got it fixed," and they could have been on their way. It seemed like at that point Sarah was willing to believe anything. He could have just ignored it. He was tasked, again, the one thing he had to do that the government brought him there to do was to get Sarah to leave. And instead of doing anything that made any sense, he hops out of the car, runs after Nola, and slaps him right in front of Sarah.
Yeah.
And of course, Sarah then fires him, and he leaves, and Fletcher decides to stay with them, and that's how the episode ends. But I thought that...
Well, no, he is Fletcher. He's Neil Fletcher.
Oh, sorry, I meant that the other drover. Person... Yeah, no, not the drover. Flynn, Sarah's accountant.
Gotcha.
He's there as
Kipling,
well. Yeah, and he's going to stay there. But I thought that it was just such a dumb decision, and just like lazy writing, at least, for those final 15 minutes to have Neil supposed to be this evil person, yet when he runs into an obstacle, not even be able to handle it for 10 minutes.
Overall, what would you give the
I would
episode?
give the series, aside from the ending, which I really did not like, probably a 7 out of 10, because I didn't think that the show really was that bad.
Very cinematic, I would assume.
Yes, I also think that it works with the editing as well. I like the montage scene with the fight scene that the drover has. Like I said, Hugh Jackman absolutely kills it. It's just there were some problems I have. Also, I could have really done without Nola's narration. I didn't think it added much to the story.
Well, not yet, but he's also going to like factor into how kids aren't allowed to just be hanging out in the desert right now. Like they need to be taken and then re-educated and stuff like that. So that's going to come into play in future episodes. Do you have any reason why you would finish the series?
Probably not, no.
Would you watch the movie?
Maybe at this point, just to see what the difference is.
The difference between the series and the movie is only, again, about 40-50 minutes runtime. So I mean, like you could finish the series and probably make it through that.
I put that this reminded me of Winning Time because Winning Time had the filter on it. And
that was also based off the 1990. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah,
and Rutherford Falls actually, surprisingly enough, because again, the Native American and talking about the land and acres and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
That was a comparison.
Yeah, that's a good one. It's got a 1 star on The Guardian. But I remember you said that The Guardian also gave 1 star to something else recently. Obliterated. And I love that show. So it's funny how we've both given like 7.5s to shows that The Guardian has just panned. Australia, the movie has a 6.6 on IMDb. Faraway Downs has a 6.9 on IMDb. Australia, the movie has a 54% on Rotten Tomatoes. Faraway Downs has a 50% on Rotten Tomatoes.
Okay, so even lower.
Well, I mean, they're basically the same is what I'm trying to get at. Slant said that it was too aspirational. Hollywood Reporter says it comes up short, but Decider said it was a laudable expansion because Faraway Downs, it doesn't entirely fix the criticism of white saviorism, but it does make some amends for it, I guess.
For a show that is TVMA, it also comes across super kid-friendly. And wasn't the film like PG-13?
I don't know what the film was, but I hadn't seen anything too violent except for the kangaroo death.
I mean, Nola...
Oh, actually, yeah, okay, yeah, I don't want to ruin something, but yeah.
Nola, when he's, like, dancing inside the tent and talking to Sarah Ashley's character, it seemed like that was supposed to be... That's straight out of Disney, like
They did add new music that was supposed to be, like, original. And then also, yeah, he is sort of like a Mowgli-esque character. And then, what was the last thing I was going to say? So the Faraway Downs, the title, came from one of the debated titles that they were going to use for the actual movie itself.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you want to know?
No, that's about it.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Hope you enjoyed this one. Bye.
Bye.